Question. Have you ever seen a film which is not good, but it's also not bad? It's just some sort of forgettable okay. But then, out of nowhere, there's one good scene that captures your attention. You know, the type of scene that you're going to look for on YouTube when you get home, and it'll make you say, "Oh, do I wish the entire picture was like that?" Well, that's what I want to do today. I want to look at somewhat mediocre animated films and find the good in them. Look on the bright side of life for once. Find the diamonds in the rough. Not la creme de la creme. Oh, no, that's far too easy. I want the creme de la merde today. While I also rant on incessantly about said films at the same time. But before we go, come to the screen a second. No, don't worry, it won't be long. I just want to say hi. Hello there! It's been a while, hasn't it? Oh, how I dearly missed you all. And talking about missing stuff, you might be wondering where I've been. And the answer is right here. I'm always here. Suffering. And here's a fun fact about myself. This was the first movie I saw in full English, at a time when I didn't speak a word of it. Mainly because I didn't grow up in England, I was born in El Salvador. Woo! El Salvador! Oh, look at me. I was a little whipper, wasn't I? So, as a child, I concluded that the only way to make sure that I fully learnt English was to come back to this film as an adult and see if I could understand it. Of course, 20 years later, and I must say, I still don't get it. Okay, so the plot for We're Back, a Dinosaur Story is basically this. A brilliant scientist from the future kidnapped a bunch of dinosaurs from the past, turned them into smart civilized creatures, and just proceeded to dump them in New York City. Why, you may ask? So they can teach children about algebra or something. I mean, there are probably better ways to approach the whole no child left behind policy, but hey, somebody has to play God around here.
Then what are you going to do about it?
And if you're thinking that the plot sounds a little bit simplistic and weird, well, it's because it's based on a somewhat eccentric children's picture book. And yes, I read it for the sake of this video. And I have to say, I absolutely love how sweet the dinosaurs are portrayed in the book. We don't really get to know them, but they have this innate innocence about them, which is just endearing. While in the film, they're just awkward doofuses who never go beyond their archetypes. Which kind of explains one of the main problems of the film. They never really did anything with the story or the characters. They simply grabbed the key points from what is already a short and strange book and never explained anything. And on top of that, they added a bunch of disjointed extra side quests in order to fill up time and call it a movie. I mean, the story's simple, right? The dinosaurs are gentle giants that have to teach children about the virtues of learning. So what do? You give them nice personalities and make a simple story about learning about the world and helping children. Just like Curious George or Paddington Bear, Gina the Crocodile. Just, you know, with aliens, genetic engineering, and utter disregard for ethics and morality. Just like the No Child Left Behind policy.
I call upon all nations to do everything they can to stop these
dinosaur
killers. Thank you. Now watch this drive.
However, instead of focusing on the dinosaur's journey, the first half of the story kinda gets hijacked by this awkward love subplot between these two children. And then the second half, oh boy, it gets dark. Literally, the warm oranges and bright yellows get quickly replaced by dark blues and cold greens. And just like my adult love life, the tone gets more somber as you go along. And it all starts when the main villain of the film appears. Professor Screw-Eyes. He's the scientist's brother, and instead of helping children, he wants to give them nightmares through his circus of fear. I swear to God, From the moment we see his circus for the first scene, it feels as if he personally hijacks the movie and completely changes the aesthetic and tone. And speaking as someone who loves creepy and dark stuff in animation, I have to admit, it's my favourite section hands down. It's just so strange in comparison to the first half that you can't help but love it. However, even though I like the villain, I'm not recommending everything related to him. What I really want to talk about though is his death. He tried brainwashing the dinosaurs to become his next attraction, but by the end of the film, he has lost control over everyone. The children, the dinosaurs, even his own employees. And the audience gets to see him for what he really is, a scared and sad old man. After everyone leaves, he is left with one realization. In a circus of fear, at least someone needs to be scared. And if everyone leaves and he's the only one around, well... I mean, I personally think that type of scene is something that you would encounter in a Terry Pratchett novel or an Edgar Allan Poe short story. Because, be honest with me, would you ever think a scene like that would come out 30 minutes after watching a Barney lookalike hump a Spider-Man balloon? All in all, the film may be messy, but it has a lot of charm, even if that charm is kind of dark and very, very messed up. Oh, when Illumination's The Grinch was announced back in 2018, I didn't expect much. Why? Because Illumination doesn't make films, they make products.
Dame tu guineo.
Sure, people complain about how generic they look at first, but every time they release a film, it's always the same. Gets ridiculed at first, then pandered by critics, and then becomes a financial success.
Those numbers, the Super Mario Brothers movie has the biggest opening of 2023.
Wow.
By the way, also the biggest opening weekend for an animated film ever.
Ugh. Everything they make feels unnatural to me. It's like somewhere along the way they made a satanic pact that no matter how bland or plastic their product tastes, families will just eat it up. And maybe, there'll be a hint of pepper in all of that plastic. One good idea that will get constantly drowned by all of the blandness and decisions obviously made by the marketing department. But I digress. In the end, The Grinch is among Illumination's top 3 best films, and probably the best modern film adaptation of Dr. Seuss's work, both by default. And the story, well, everyone knows it, so I don't have to go into detail. The Grinch is unhappy and decides to steal the Christmas presents from the Who's out of pure spite and jealousy. Some hijinks ensue, and by the end, he learns his lesson and learns what Christmas is really all about. And yes, this is sure Illumination's version. It has a lot of pointless characters, the story gets sidetracked by a reindeer in the midpoint, there are a lot of manipulative cute scenes, awful music, the list goes on. To be honest, I don't have a lot of positive things to say about the film, besides that it's very pretty. But you know what else looks very pretty? Kangaroos! But that still doesn't mean that they're good enough for you in close proximity. Nothing from Australia is.
You'll bloody break the thing. Oh god, crap.
I have a problem with that place. Well, moving on. There are 2 okay scenes that I kinda liked, and a really great one that really spoke to me. Not enough to get me emotionally invested in any of Illumination's films, mind you. I'm still a bitter adult. But let's go through the motions. First you have the introduction scene for the Grinch, in which he's just being a jerk while buying groceries. A lot of people seem to like that scene for the humour alone, which is okay. And of course the vital Christmas stealing scene, which, again, is okay. It's quick, energetic, and highly creative, although a little bit short. But even though these scenes are actually pretty good on their own, none of them really spoke to me until the 3rd act, in which the Grinch has to attend the Christmas dinner. In this particular scene, the Grinch actually gets really socially anxious about interacting with all of these people he's just stolen gifts from. And even though it's rather effective at showcasing his emotions, it's rather simple in its approach. It's just him having dinner with the Whos and struggling to interact with them. So why is it so important to me? Well, because, first, this is something the Grinch franchise has never explored before, or at the very least to this extent. In every other Grinch adaptation, everything stops once the Grinch gets his redemption, and we cut immediately to the great banquet at the end with everyone being happy. But here, I think the decision to scale it down and make it down to earth was pretty clever. It's just a holiday celebration in a small house. There's nothing really great about it. But still, we're able to feel his struggle to adapt and willingness to actually change and interact with the Whos. I've already seen the Grinch be a jerk to people, and I've already seen him steal Christmas, but I've never really seen the Grinch trying to act normally with people and try to make a positive impression in a normal social setting. He has always been isolated for most of his life, so now that he's made amends with the Whos, it's normal that he actually has to struggle to adapt. Of course, we see glimpses of this in the Jim Carrey version, but I'm surprised that it was Illumination from all studios to come and not only expand on this type of scene, but also to actually portray a very realistic depiction of social anxiety. And secondly, now that I think about it, this can actually be really helpful for children. You know, showing them that it's normal to feel anxious at social gatherings or during a holiday, and let them know that it's completely normal to feel that way from time to time. All in all, I ended up disassociating throughout most of the film, but this last scene was more than a pleasant surprise, which made me somewhat hopeful for the future of Illumination. Which, mind you, I don't hate it, I just don't trust them. I don't know why. Maybe their writers are ravenous koalas which are being bred by angry, fighting kangaroos or something.
Columbia Pictures brings you Adam Sandler like you've never seen him before.
Greetings! My name is Lily, and in behalf of Mr. Valentino, I have to say that we are very sorry for putting two holiday movies together and failed to make a good joke about it. So, to make it up, boop! Here's a sticker. Hope you like it!
Oh, Adam Sandler's 8 Crazy Nights, oh my!
Adam Sandler.
It's crazy! What can I say about what's considered one of the worst holiday specials of all time? You know, at the very least something that hasn't been said at least 100 times already. Well, I have a soft spot for these designs. Yes, even the awful ones. Because in my opinion, making an interesting and appealing design for a human character is way harder than making one for an anthropomorphic creature. But even then, everyone knows that the animators who worked on this went that extra mile in order to make it somewhat bearable to watch. Because visually, it's great. But story-wise, well...
Peanuts for me?
Things like that make waking up feel like a mistake. Okay, the plot is basically this. One day, Adam Sandler decides to ruin the career of the animators who worked on The Iron Giant. David is a drunken jerk who hates the holidays because when he was a child, his parents died in a tragic accident around Hanukkah. So of course, what can a young man without guidance and a lot of pent-up emotions do but become an but become a jerk? And after some trouble with the law, David is given the option to either do community service alongside the greatest character ever put in film, Whitey, voiced by Sandler himself.
Don't be scared!
Do that, or go to jail. Given the choice, of course, I think I'd choose the chair, even if I was charged with a simple misdemeanor. But anyways, of course, some vulgar hijinks ensue that will end up with David coming to terms with his emotions and see the good side of Hanukkah all over again. In terms of story, yeah, the movie is just another lazy Adam Sandler comedy, aimed at the lowest denominator. Very simple, aimlessly vulgar, and shamelessly capitalistic. I mean, the logos of companies like Toys R Us and Victoria's Secret sing what is supposed to be the big emotional moment in the film. But of course, there are many detailed reviews of this film out there, so I'm not going to bother dissecting it. I just want to make 2 points. Yes, Sandler did get his hands on some of the crew members from the Iron Giant through Warner Brothers, but I mainly want to bring attention to Stefan Frank, who was the head of animation. Not only does this man have a great curriculum, but a lot of people credit him with trying his hardest to save this film, at least in a technical aspect. So yes, we salute you, Frank. It's also worth mentioning that he also worked on We're Back. The last point was not important, I just wanted to bring it up as a nice coincidence. And finally, my second point being that if I had to choose a good scene from this film, I'm surprisingly torn between 2 options. Yeah, coloured me surprised. Well, for starters, you have Dave's song. It's basically the musical intro of the film, and well, it's nice. Not only is the animation able to shine brighter because it's a chase scene, but also because it's one of the few songs that doesn't have anything to do with Whitey. From the colours to the designs to even the song itself, everything's nice. Not great, just nice. And for my second pick, I'll be damned if I don't mention one of my guiltiest pleasures of all time. And that is the Long Time Ago song. I swear, every time I skip the channels during the holidays, I bear along with this film just for the sake of this scene. The whole thing is basically David and his lost love having a melancholic duet on how nice everything was before the tragedy that transformed David from a nice young boy into a bitter jerk. It's really melancholic. I find the scenes between young David and his girlfriend beyond adorable. And even though there are still a couple of stupid jokes here and there with the occasional Whitey line, I still recommend it for you to watch. If not for the song, then maybe to appreciate the effort of all of those animators dumped into this garbage trying to make it somewhat decent. Okay, before you say anything, let me explain. Yes, I'm going to cheat a bit on this one, and put these 2 films together, as I'm basically giving them the same recommendations for both. Well, that and quite honestly, I just like the idea of putting cavemen and aliens together.
When worlds collide.
Oh yeah, baby! Okay, so for both films, what's my recommendation? Well, just watch the first 6 minutes. Yeah, as strange as it sounds, I think you can gather all of the best elements from both films just in their intros. Don't get me wrong, I believe they do have some great ideas thrown into the mix, but sadly, I don't think neither work as a complete picture. Allow me to explain. First with the cavemen, just to respect seniority. The Croods: A New Age opens with a pretty energetic chase sequence against what's probably the best new creature design in the entire film. A combination between armadillos and kangaroos called Kangadillos.
Oh god, crap.
And then we go into a musical sequence set to the tune of I Think I Love You from the Partridge Family, which does help set the tone. And yes, I do believe I think these first 5 minutes encompass all the great elements of the film. The slapstick works, it's really colourful, it adds tons of energy, and finally, seeing Eep and Guy together, it's kind of cute. However, there's a big problem after that. The film continues. And honestly, I don't like it one bit. And this is what basically the plot is about. While on the search for a new home, Grug and his family manage to find a small haven on Earth where food is plentiful. However, this place is already occupied by another family called the Bettermans.
Better man? Betterman.
Emphasis on the better.
So of course, the Croods will now have to adapt to the new family's evolved ways while hijinks ensue on a lighter and more comedy-driven story. And that's why I don't like this film. Neither on theory nor on praxis. They simplified everything about this franchise for the sake of creating a simpler, more marketable comedy. I mean, just by looking at the downgrading creature design, you know the franchise has been lobotomized. In the first, you have all of these amazing designs that not only combine different species, but also took a humorous spin on evolutionary theories, like land whales, birds with shells, or extinct mammal-like reptiles. Sure, not all of them can be winners. I mean, some of them look like rejected Pokemon. But in the sequel, Everything looks like a rejected Pokemon. I mean, for crying out loud, their crowning jewel of comedy is this.
Go get it!
Ugh. Oh, and don't even get me started on the actual story. I have so many complaints that this whole video could just be me defending the first Croods. I mean, the first wasn't great by any means, but at least it had heart. Remember how it ends? You know, with them literally leaving their dark cave and riding off into the sunset with all of the animals. Remember, they've grown not only as people, but also as a family. Well, forget all of that. Apparently, none of that even happened, and so the characters have to relearn their lessons all over again. Why have emotion when you can have 80s references, screaming seals, and bright neon colours? I mean, if you want to make a goofy comedy starring cavemen, that's fine. Make your own characters or do a spin-off, which this franchise seems to have a lot of. But I don't think it's okay to retcon an already existing film and change the work of many people just for the sake of profit. Ugh. In the end, I know some of you like it, but it's not really my cup of tea. But hey, at least we can agree the intro is great from beginning to end. And talking about intros, let's begin with the end of this segment by talking about that Alien movie from 2009.
Scroll on the bottom there. See this one?
I wish. No. Come on, no one even remembers that one. I meant the bland one with The Rock. The animated one. Yep, that's it, there you go. Planet 51, ladies and gentlemen. The one film I discovered through bowling. Yeah, I'm not kidding. There was this old bowling alley I used to go to as a child, and they always had the same movie posters up from like a decade ago. You can see it right here in this picture I stole from the internet. But anyways, what's the plot about? Well, what would happen if an American astronaut crash lands on an alien planet and now humans are considered the invaders? And that's it. One clever twist in the beginning, and from then on out it's just an average friendly alien movie, just with a lot of dated jokes. There's no commentary, nothing special about what could be funny about humans being the aliens for once. Mind you, I've seen this concept done far better in Futurama, Deep Space Nine, and even with Rolling with the Ronks. But anyways, like I said, the film starts out with a really clever and well-executed introduction, which I'm not going to spoil. And the first 5 minutes have a lot of jokes and hidden details that pay homage to the sci-fi genre. And while some of these jokes are actually kind of clever, not all of them are really great. But I do have to admit, I have a soft spot for alien jokes. Sadly, after that, the movie just goes really generic. For example, you have this love story between the main character and this self-righteous hippie girl. It starts out fine, but the writers never develop their relationship or do anything interesting with it. They just stay as their basic archetypes from beginning to end. I'll give them this, however, they did try to make the military morally grey in this film. In this sense, they're not evil, just scared and confused. Sadly, this is just the exact same exploration of Cold War fears as the Iron Giant. Just, you know, worse.
Soldiers, attention! There is among us!
Like, imagine if the Iron Giant actually had a deviation from an emotional scene just so they can stop everything and tell the audience what the actual message is.
It's among us!
But like I said, we have to look on the bright side of things for a change. The intro, I believe, it's great. If it was a short, I would praise it till the end of the earth. And to be fair, some concepts are actually interesting, and some sequences can be a lot of fun. Mainly the ones involving Rover. Who is this? A moral Mars rover type of robot who just cares about examining rocks? Like, imagine a more unhinged version of R2-D2 or a more passive version of Chopper without all the war crimes under his belt.
Among us! Among us! Among us! Among us! Among us! Among us!
Well, that are my personal favourite part of this film, which is the running joke about these two soldiers who think that they've been brainwashed by the aliens. So this evil scientist extracts their brains, but instead of it killing them, it just makes them become quite civilized. to the point that they actually think it's an enlightening experience and thus decide to perform that same procedure on the scientist by the end. It's incredibly dark and my favourite aspect of the film. But the video is called Great Scenes from Mediocre Movies, and this set of jokes and segments are interwoven into the narrative of the film. So, it really doesn't count. What counts though are the first 5 minutes. You can watch it right here on YouTube. I promise, it won't disappoint you. I have to be honest, when I heard about Sherlock Gnomes, I kind of rolled my eyes like everyone else. But I gave it an honest try just for the sake of morbid curiosity. And I have to say that not only did I end up liking it as a guilty pleasure, but there was a segment that actually made me drop my jaw a bit. Allow me to explain. At first, I had no interest in watching this film. Not because of the absurdity of the premise. Oh no. It was because that this is a sequel to what I consider one of the blandest adaptations in the world. And just in case you don't know what the first Romeo and Juliet is, it's just the most basic retelling of Romeo and Juliet that you can imagine. Just, you know, with basic cartoon archetypes, lame modern puns, the actual themes of the play being replaced by modern pop songs, and of course, missing the one element that makes the story a tragedy. It's like saying I want to reboot the Plague Dogs and give them superpowers in the end, or reboot Spirit and make it about my horsey going to the fashion show. Oh no. People are sick. Anyways, I don't know what type of children are asking their parents to take them to see a Sherlock Holmes film nowadays, but regardless, this was made. Not only with bigger names attached, oh no, but also with a bigger budget. I ended up watching it on TV, and I have to say, I ended up liking it for how strange it was. I mean, this film has nothing to do with the original, and Romeo and Juliet are barely in here, which I guess is kind of a plus. Sherlock Gnomes just comes in and hijacks the plot, and now it's about finding the missing gnomes before they are killed by this super camp version of Moriarty. And the whole film is about finding clues and meeting new weird characters, each stranger than the last. And yeah, I really like the direction they took, even if that means I just like the film for the same reason I hate The Croods too. Because here's the thing, in here, I don't mind that this is a lighter comedy. Because unlike The Croods, this is not a downgrade. The first one was so bland and unoriginal that the idea of a bunch of weirdos grabbing this franchise and transforming it into their own disjointed version of Toy Story 4 doesn't feel that bad at all. Which yes, just look at these shots and designs and tell me this doesn't scream Toy Story wannabe to you. I mean, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. And for a film called Sherlock Gnomes, you can tell that people who actually worked on it went above and beyond. And nothing makes that more clearer than the last spot on this video, and that goes to Sherlock's thought process. We go into his psyche and are presented with some really interesting and impressive 2D animation segments. I mean, just look at this animation. Some might say that it's not the most impressive stuff in the world when compared to Disney, DreamWorks or Warner Brothers, but come on. Would you ever think something like this would come out of a film called Sherlock Gnomes, or for that fact, even a Romeo and Juliet sequel? And that's the biggest mystery in here. Who thought to give this much budget and effort to Sherlock Gnomes? Why? I mean, what kind of drugs would you have to take to... Oh no. Okay, it now just occurred to me that somebody probably laundered crazy amounts of money through this film. Doesn't that make a bit too much sense? I mean, giving this much money and resources to a sequel of Romeo and Juliet of all things? Think about it. The bigger budget, the names, the massive marketing campaign, all of this unnecessary but pretty segments. Am I onto something here? Hopefully not, because I don't want to get murdered in my sleep by Elton John or Lady Gaga. Elton John, please don't come and kill me. Please don't send your tiny dancers. I'm begging you to spare my life.